inevitable and terrible revenge. 3 words no one would ever want hanging over their future, especially when the most powerful army on the planet is now your declared enemy. That is the message coming out of Moscow tonight, cold, deliberate, and unmistakable. The massacre in Kherson that took place just hours ago is already being framed as a turning point with devastating consequences for the Ukrainian regime. Inside the Kremlin, the language has shifted decisively. Diplomacy is no longer part of the vocabulary. What is being spoken now is punishment. Dmitry Medvedev, former president of Russia and current vice chairman of the Security Council, has stated bluntly that only the ruthless language of revenge remains, warning that it will be swift and inevitable as part of the ongoing Russian offensive. So, are you comfortable now, Zelensky? Now comes the reckoning. That, more or less, is the message Russia claims it has delivered to what it openly calls the pseudo-leader of the Ukrainian regime. In Moscow, officials are already speaking of an inevitable and terrible act of vengeance for what happened in Kherson. This is not being treated as just another incident in a long war. Russian authorities describe it as an open wound in territory they control and had considered relatively secure. In the coastal town of Horly, in the Kherson province, a Ukrainian drone attack on civilians left at least 24 people dead and 29 wounded during New Year celebrations. This was not a military barracks. It was not an arms depot. It was a cafe and a hotel facing the Black Sea, a place where entire families were welcoming 2026 with music, food, laughter, and embraces. According to Vladimir Saldo, the governor of Kherson, 3 unmanned aerial vehicles were launched at that exact location. One of the drones carried an incendiary mixture specifically designed to turn the site into a death trap. The consequences were described as daunting. Many civilians lost their lives after coming into direct contact with the flames, which spread with such ferocity that rescuers were unable to save more people, and the fire could not be fully extinguished until dawn. Among the victims was at least 1 child, and among the wounded were several minors, 6, according to Saldo's initial report. Reflection question: can democracy really be defended with bombs? Write it in the comments. And while you're at it, don't forget to give this video a like. It really helps the channel. Your comments don't just sit there, they guide what we create. For Saldo, this crime carries a sinister echo from Ukraine's recent history. He emphasized that what happened in Horly is, in essence, strikingly similar to the 2014 attack on the House of Trade Unions in Odessa, when Ukrainian neo-Nazis deliberately set fire to a building where citizens opposed to the coup d'état and the policies of Kiev's new authorities had taken refuge. That memory, raw, unresolved, and soaked in anger, forms the backdrop against which Dmitry Medvedev's voice now resonates. The former Russian president and current Security Council vice chairman made it clear that even everyday language falls short of describing what occurred. Cruelty, squalor, cynicism. He argued that the vocabulary of a normal person is too poor to define the actions of what he called affiliated scum, explicitly referencing ideological collaborators linked to Stepan Bandera. For Medvedev, this was not a mistake, not collateral damage, but an ideological line drawn in blood. And he did not stop at moral condemnation. Medvedev moved directly into the territory of retribution. He stated that only the ruthless language of revenge is appropriate, inevitable, and rapid, unfolding in the course of the Russian army's offensive. His message was explicit. Russia's response would not be symbolic, not rhetorical, but integrated directly into ongoing military operations. According to the Security Council vice chairman, retaliation should not be limited to those who physically launched the drones. Russia's response, he insisted, must reach both the executioners of the attack and their various commanders. Then came the phrase that many in Moscow interpret as a definitive turning point: enough ceremonies. Those words signal what Russian leadership portrays as the end of patience regarding attacks on civilians. Medvedev sharpened his rhetoric even further in subsequent remarks aimed squarely at Kiev's leadership. He said Ukraine is led by what he called Bandera-style bastards who must be punished for their actions, making it clear that, in his view, this hunt cannot be confined within Ukraine's borders. According to reports by the TASS news agency, the former Russian president even used a brutally vivid image to describe what he believes should happen to those responsible. In his own words, he said they must be slaughtered like diseased pigs wherever they are found, in Ukraine, in Europe, or in seaside resorts. He emphasized that he was speaking of judicial and military pursuit, wherever those who gave the orders might be hiding. What do you think about the idea that responsibility in modern warfare extends far beyond the battlefield and across borders? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. Governor Saldo added yet another layer to this narrative of vengeance and retribution. He suggested that the attack on the Horly Cafe may have been an attempt to compensate for the failure of an earlier strike on the residence of Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to Saldo, the death toll in Horly exceeds 24, and when combined with 29 wounded, it paints a picture of massacre designed to send a direct message to the Kremlin. As the numbers were being finalized, Saldo insisted repeatedly that this was neither collateral damage nor a misidentified military target. The drone struck a cafe and a hotel packed with civilians celebrating the arrival of the new year. He stressed that the choice of location mirrors, point by point, the method used in Odessa in 2014. Trap people inside, ignite the fire, and let the flames do the dirty work. Russia's diplomatic corps responded with equally heavy words. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova described the attack as a demonstration of the bestial nature of the Kiev regime. She said these actions are driven by neo-Nazi hatred, accelerating dehumanization, and mockery of the sacred, traits she claimed are inherent to collaborators in Western Ukraine. Zakharova did not limit her accusations to Ukrainian command structures. In a statement loaded with direct blame, she declared, "We accuse all those who finance the terrorist bastards in Ukraine. We accuse them of the murder of children and the extermination of civilians. We accuse them of corrupting Ukrainian statehood, turning it into a killing machine." Her words made it clear that, in Moscow's view, Western sponsors share responsibility for every victim. From Zakharova's perspective, the chain of complicity extends far beyond Kiev. Those who have armed, trained, and financed the Ukrainian army are seen as part of the same mechanism that ultimately strikes cafes, hotels, homes, and leisure centers. Every child killed in Kherson, she argued, is a reminder of the killing machine she claims has been installed within the Ukrainian state. The narrative is not just military, it is moral, ideological, and accusatory on a global scale. From Crimea, another response arrived, blending grief with fury. The head of the Republic, Sergei Aksyonov, called the incident a bloody crime committed by Ukrainian Nazis, enraged on New Year's night. He emphasized that the attack targeted civilians in the Kherson province, leaving dozens dead and wounded. "There are no words to express our pain and sorrow," he wrote on his Telegram channel. Aksyonov highlighted the symbolic cruelty of the timing. At the very hour when much of Europe was raising glasses to new beginnings, Ukrainian drones were turning a coastal corner of the Black Sea into a scene of charred bodies and shattered families, reminding residents of Crimea and Kherson alike that war respects no holidays and offers no emotional truces. The outrage did not stop with the regions directly hit. The governor of the Kursk Oblast, Alexander Kinstein, reacted by saying that Ukrainian authorities have nothing human left in them. He added that there are no words to express the pain and injustice of what happened, echoing the sentiments of communities that have lived under fire for months. According to Russian authorities, this attack is not an isolated case. They insist that Ukraine constantly carries out deliberate strikes against civilian populations in Russian border regions. Drones and missiles from Kiev, they say, routinely hit civilian vehicles, homes, leisure areas, shopping centers, and other non-military facilities, leaving casualties again and again. That word, constantly, carries weight. It implies that for residents of these regions, getting into a car, entering a mall, or sitting at a seaside terrace can become, in seconds, a deadly roulette triggered from hundreds of kilometers away. For them, Horly is the most brutal confirmation yet of that daily risk. In this context, the phrase inevitable revenge takes on a very concrete political and military meaning. When Medvedev speaks of an inevitable and rapid response during the course of the army's offensive, he is signaling that Moscow intends to fold this episode into a logic of calculated escalation, targeting both the immediate perpetrators and those who designed the command chain behind them. Enough ceremonies is not just incendiary rhetoric. For Russian leadership, it marks the end of any remaining distinction between words and action. If there were attempts to preserve certain limits before, attacks like Horly, with 24 confirmed dead, including a child, and 29 wounded, many burned, are being presented as the final rupture of all restraint. Do you believe this moment truly marks a point of no return in the conflict, where escalation becomes unavoidable? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. Ultimately, for Russia, the Horly attack crystallizes several red lines at once. It targets civilians. It occurs on territory Moscow considers its own. It reproduces patterns associated with Odessa in 2014. And it fits into what Russian officials describe as a broader series of selective strikes against clearly civilian targets in border regions. That is why the voices of Medvedev, Aksionov, Zakharova, Saldo, and Kinstein sound so aligned. One message, repeated in different tones but with the same core meaning: there will be no forgetting and no indulgence. Between the lines, the message aimed at Zelensky is ferocious. This is no longer only about military resistance, but about bearing the consequences of every drone sent toward a terrace full of families. For Moscow, what happened in Kherson demands a brutal response. And when Russian decision-makers speak of inevitable revenge and declare that ceremonies are over, they are warning that after Horly, the price for attacking civilians may be far higher than Kyiv and its allies had calculated. In conclusion, the tragedy in Horly is not being framed by Moscow as another grim statistic of war, but as a defining moment that reshapes the logic of the conflict. The deaths of civilians celebrating the new year, families, children, ordinary people, have been elevated into a symbol of what Russian leaders call Ukraine's moral and strategic collapse. Historically, attacks on civilians have often marked turning points in wars, from the bombing campaigns of World War II to the darkest episodes of the Cold War, when escalation followed perceived atrocities. In this narrative, Russia positions itself as both judge and executioner, claiming moral justification for harsher measures. The beneficiaries, from Moscow's point of view, are its military strategists, now unbound by restraint. The losers are not only Ukraine's leadership, but civilians on all sides, trapped in an ever-widening cycle of retaliation. International media have long warned that the erosion of red lines leads to uncontrollable escalation, and Horly may be remembered as one of those irreversible moments when vengeance replaced diplomacy entirely and the conflict crossed into a darker, more unforgiving phase. Now it's your turn. After hearing this analysis, ask yourself what comes next when revenge becomes official policy. Is escalation inevitable, or is there still space, however narrow, for restraint? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation matters. If this report helped you see the bigger picture, give it a like and subscribe to stay with us as this story continues to unfold. Activate notifications so you don't miss what could be the next decisive chapter. And if you believe in this project and want to support independent geopolitical analysis, consider becoming a channel member or supporting us through Patreon or PayPal, with links in the description. In moments like these, staying informed isn't optional, it's essential.